Hello and welcome to Our Time. In 2023, Asabia Theatre of Hope emerged as an arts academy supporting the development of new theatre, music, dance, poetry and audio-visual work showcasing the voices of people of colour and using the arts to explore and contribute to social discourse and bring diverse peoples together and strengthen the community capacity for social cohesion that transcends tribal lines. The theatre hosts weekly classes, holiday workshops, theatre development spaces currently based in the northern suburbs of Adelaide and primarily collaborating with diverse new arrivals to Australia. And finally, all of this becomes a performance, and those works have been in the recent Adelaide Fringe Festival. And now from the Northern Sound System, and to explain what all of that I just said means, please welcome Delia Olam.
Hi.
Delia, thanks for coming in.
Such a pleasure.
It's great to talk to you because we had a lovely conversation today that opened up so many things.
Yeah.
And what's genuinely interesting is the next few weeks we're talking to people that had the same sort of background that you had. So before we explain exactly all of those things we were talking about, just explain how your interest in the arts began, because it's such a similar story.
Yeah. It began from being nurtured and raised in a home that was just completely enveloped by music, where both of my parents are musicians and sang together, and that's how they met. And my dad was all over.
They sang to each other across the crowded road.
That's right. And they were in a choir.
Don't you love that?
They did. And they sang beautifully together. And Dad would play all the stringed instruments, guitar, dulcimer, mandolin, etc., lute. And then Mum would be playing all the woodwind instruments, the flute, the recorders, and other things.
So
besides.
you're a little girl and you're probably in a bassinet and you're probably under a table or somewhere while they're actually performing.
Yeah. So
you went to the gigs, so to
I went
speak.
to all the gigs with them. I'm an only child as well, so they just brought me around like a handbag, and I ended up falling asleep.
Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah.
Actually, isn't that a good thing? Because if you learn to live your parents' life to start with, you've got the foundation that, you know, you're going to be brought up with and probably affect your whole life in the future.
Yeah. So they had multiple gigs throughout the week, and I would be falling asleep at the back of stage as if they were calling a bush dance and thumping away, or if they were crooning away in restaurants, I was falling asleep under the tables. And yeah, very fun memories. And eventually they would teach me some songs and bring me up. And, you know, they had me at 3 years old singing The Rose.
Oh, really?
As if I knew anything about love.
It was such a sophisticated song for a little 3-year-old.
Yeah.
But I bet that brought the house down.
Oh, yeah. I could feel it. I could oh, they're loving this. I don't know why.
I love that. That's a great story. What happened next?
So then a combination of an attempt at rebellion and a genuine passion, where there was this assumption that I would of course be a musician and of course be a singer, just like my parents. And while I did genuinely love music, I was like, well, maybe you don't know me. And at the same time, this beautiful director and teacher was working at our school and took myself and my class when we were in year 8 to do this truly, genuinely mind-blowing performance in the round with sand all on the stage, with the parts divided very interestingly of The Tempest by Shakespeare.
Yes, such a simple piece to do. And so easy to get rid of the sand afterwards, because I've experienced that at my theatre. Sand still keeps dropping out of carpets. But that is a very unusual thing to do for a group of that age.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for it, because it's a really tender age, and he allowed us real theatre process where we were allowed to be chaotic with it and to really bring something out from inside ourselves and have ownership of what was given. To become. And then to stand there at the end and be really celebrated by our community. It was like a very instrumental moment for me as a human, and also the beginning of the love of theatre.
What is your community? Do you have a background from a family from somewhere else?
Not especially. I do have a mix in my, mixed European background.
Yeah,
sort
mixed
of thing.
European background.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, because those instruments are the key to it, really.
Yeah.
And you've ended up playing all of those things too.
Yeah, it was me and the guitar for a long time. And then I was writing a piece of theatre some years ago that was about a historical figure, a Persian woman who lived in the mid-1800s, and she was a poet, and I was trying to put her poetry to music.
Your music.
Yeah, and I just felt her around me, just judging the guitar really harshly. So I started picking up other instruments and ended up with cello and Appalachian dulcimer in the mix.
Yeah,
sometimes
just
the
explain
harp.
the dulcimer, because it's not a common instrument anymore.
Yeah, which is funny to me, just because it's always been around in our house, because I guess my dad's really fond of medieval and obscure instruments and has made at least one of everything he loved. So it's just always been there. But there's the hammered dulcimer that is maybe more familiar in some ways. And then the Appalachian dulcimer, which would tend to be in a leaf shape and played on the lap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe Joni Mitchell.
I just recently, yes, that's a good example.
Yeah.
I just recently saw, I think it was from Hungary, like a band of gypsy players with a woman playing that, madly playing the Flight of the Bumblebee of all things.
Oh, wow.
Which was just amazing.
Well, Dad's got one of them and he loves to play it, and it's wonderful to see. Yeah.
It's so incredible those instruments have been around probably forever, sort of thing.
It does feel
humans got the idea of stringing things together and hitting them with something.
And it does feel like connecting to something quite ancient.
Well, it's a small piano, really, when you think about it. Only you're being the keys as well.
Yeah, the Appalachian dulcimer, though, has only 4 strings, and 2 of them tend to be tuned down and up the octave, and then the ones in the middle are just a perfect harmony, and the frets are pentatonic. So it's a very forgiving instrument that allows you to just really pour out and give.
Yeah. Okay, so that's sort of your background. Oh, no, it's not your background, because you've done so many more things than this. Just keep the story going.
Okay,
so
sure.
You've played all these instruments, but this has taken you all over the place.
Yeah. So I have gone on to reclaim my love of music despite the expectations and the desire to push away, and I have recorded albums and such. But I did go on and do training at a few different places in theatre design, theatre and film, and then theatre directing at Drama Centre, Flinders University, and subsequently worked with different companies, sometimes as a performer, sometimes as a director or choreographer, and then eventually, I ended up working with Slingsby a couple of years ago as a multidisciplinary theatre maker.
Just explain what Slingsby it's particularly is as a theatre company.
Yeah, Slingsby Theatre Company is a maker of wonder and hope-filled experiences for village audiences, live performances that include a lot of shadow play and sometimes puppetry and live performance, a lot of narration straight to the audience, and it's got a very particular texture to it, and it often allows for a bit of a dark or sort of fairy tale kind of gothic feel and a dream-like quality, and it's for young people, but it's just as much for anyone. And so we got to have this unique experience during COVID and sort of at the tail end of the shutdowns to be employed full-time to come in and create new works together and then take them into schools. And we were invited to come as every type of artist that we were, as the designers and the singers and the writers and the actors and the directors, and to not shy away from the multiness of our passion for the arts.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing though, isn't it? Because you become passionate about what it is that you do.
Yeah.
And sometimes the passion can overshadow the purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe.
But we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to talk about a project that you have been working on that I talked about in the beginning, which sounds to me like just such a great idea.
Yeah.
Apart from anything else, it's just a great idea.
Thanks.
Yep. And we'll be back in just a short time with Delia. We'll talk more about that particular idea and we'll show you some pictures at the same time. Back in a tick. Delia Olam is our guest in this episode of Our Time, and we're talking about your life, which has been absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Starting off with musical parents, you become musical yourself, you became an actress, you became a director, an instigator of material.
Yeah.
But during the last Fringe here in Adelaide, and also the Fringe before, you've been working with this group creating new work. So just explain that, please.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right, sorry, time's up.
It's been a really beautiful, organic process that happened from just taking a risk together with another beautiful risk taker at Northern Sound System. My time...
Yeah, just explain Northern Sound System, because it sounds like you'd hire your equipment for a band there.
It does, and I think that was probably the point. The building has been painted to almost look like a big boombox, so I think that was kind of what they were going for. But
when you say that, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a really cool initiative. The council area out in the north called Playford invested in this repurposed basketball court to turn it into a space with a lot of recording studios and a gig venue, and make it available for mostly music-based arts programs.
Well, you know that a lot of the bands out of the 60s who were immigrants to Australia from the UK, well, from all over the place actually, they really instigated a whole music scene in Adelaide that became a national and international scene.
Yeah, and there's definitely a scene out there. There's so many great artists that have actually been nurtured by Northern Sound System, and they have a really beautiful relationship with Adelaide and nurture especially diverse artists, because that's a big part of the population out in the northern suburbs now.
Yeah, right. Well, talk about last year's piece, because that's quite interesting. And I'll use the term before you do, because it was immersive theatre, which is something that we don't see a great deal of. Just explain what that was and the purpose.
Yeah. So, this beautiful work of immersive theatre emerged from a space where I was fresh out of working with Slingsby as a company and was embracing the multidisciplinary aspect of theatre making, of inviting others to see themselves as more than one thing. So we opened up a creativity space where, okay, you might see yourself as a designer, but you could also do some acting, or you might already see yourself as a dancer, but how about some spoken word and this type of thing. And so in came through the doors, it could have been anyone, but it so happened to be a big group of young migrants who are first generation, but in there like between 18 and 25 from different places. And they were just enjoying being playful together, and we were just, it was very healing and playful place. And then soon emerged this desire together to work on something more meaningful. And they identified at first the discourse of mental health, and especially intergenerational differences of opinion about what it even is. And that turned into an immersive piece of theatre that was around the premise of a funeral. And the audience and the cast were sat together as if they were all attending the funeral.
So the audience, did they know who was cast or not?
Maybe some of them didn't, to be honest. It was,
So suddenly somebody stands up with a eulogy.
Yeah. And actually, because it was immersive, even somehow the mind, the suspension of disbelief can become very convincing when you're right in it and the person's right next to you, you know, in tears. And sometimes it was very moving. Someone would spontaneously offer a tissue and, you know, engage with the actors because it felt so real, and it allowed for a really beautiful conversation afterwards as well. And we played with poetry and movement and acting then. It was sort of the fruit of that first year of play, just once a week.
And did you do the performance? I guess you've got to call it a performance because it's really another word.
Yeah.
Did you do that as part of the Fringe that year?
We did, and we actually were very honoured to receive an award from Australian Refugee Association and Adelaide Fringe for Cultural Diversity Award, and the way that we handled that subject, and it was very, very beautiful initial season. But then we went on to continue that space weekly, and more people came in, still from that wider population in the north. And this time, a different work emerged around a discourse on unconditional love. And so we said it worked so well last time to have a gathering that was based around a community gathering that we already know about. Like there is something inherently theatrical about a funeral even. There's already, who plays what parts, and we know
who died to start with.
Yes, and there's a kind of script to it, and we thought, okay, there's something actually quite lovely about that, especially for community theatre, where people come in and they're like, oh, if it's a wedding, I know sort of how to interact with that, or if it's a community, luncheon, okay, I know how to interact with that.
So what subject did you pick?
Yeah, so we ended up going with a wedding, and it gradually revealed itself to be about intercultural marriage and about the difficulties of moving from a sort of attachment to tradition and culture as it has been known until now, to growing into building a new type of culture now that they're in this new place.
It must be really difficult for people who have migrated to Australia, for example, who've been brought up in a culture that is fixed in its ideals and ideas for probably hundreds of years, if not thousands.
Yeah.
And then a new generation to come to a new country where none of that exists, apart from the history they've come from, because that's embedded in our minds, from early childhood. Like arranged marriages, for example. Did you talk about that?
Yeah, well, they did. I was there just holding space for the stories that they wanted to tell. And it was really beautiful to see them really wanting to honour what their parents' perspective is or might be and embody that as they got to step into roles that were more their parents' roles. Right. And also, interact with that and sort of show why their parents might feel, especially having been, unrooted from their original, soil, why they might feel like it's very important to nurture these things and not let them go away. And they found a really beautiful way of engaging in that discourse.
We've got some photos, I think, from this year's show. Yeah. Let's have a look at those, because it gives you sort of a better understanding of the space. Yeah,
so we set up with tables all around where the audience and the cast were sort of attending at first a Harmony Day community event, and it was organised by many families, diverse families. There was an Indian family and then an African family. We hesitated to say specifically which country just because they were actually themselves all from many different countries. And,
hard to explain the mix then, really.
Yeah, and then when it became apparent that there was this kind of Romeo and Juliet situation going on, and that the two families, that there was two African families that had been eyeing off, thinking that their children were a good match, but then it became apparent that some other match had already happened and it was a big blow up, and there were sort of comical elements that they really enjoyed playing into that. There's our Romeo and Juliet. Right. These actors did so well. They all wrote the piece together. So every week we were devising the work, writing the work and refining it and finding, okay, this is this part, what's it going to be? And then they would speak from their heart, and then we'd turn that into script. And then, eventually we had this kind of back and forth at tables where you got to see these two families consulting with each other after the big blow up and hear them each having their apparently very unique point of view, but showing how those two different points of view were more similar than they thought, and that eventually...
well, there's a common sense behind all of it in most cases, isn't there? And there's, when you can pull it all apart and you realise, well, we're saying this because, and We're saying this because we're all human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually Asabiya, the name of the company, is a word that I encountered some years ago, and I've just been holding it in my heart because it had such an impact on me. The word is an Arabic word, actually, that means group feeling, or the glue that holds a community together, that transcends tribal lines. It isn't just about being the same, but instead it's about shared experience and the feeling that we have when we experience life's ups and downs together, and it makes us stronger than anything else. And I think we just noticed that the coming together for theatre making, being from all different backgrounds, really created that group feeling, and that the shows themselves that we were creating were also inviting into the space diversity, but at the end there was this sharing of food and a real...
Well, first of all, it's the sameness of us all, but then the sharing of the food is an interesting... You know, I come from a theatre restaurant background. Not quite the same. But when people eat together, everything changes.
And we've done it at both shows now, and I'm become sort of convinced that that has to be part of it, that there's that, especially its tradition tends to be like jollof rice or ugali or something that is, you know...
I guess it's, yes, you might have to work backwards next time. What food can we have at the end? And
or what community event will it be next time? Maybe a graduation, or, you know, like
an interesting
maybe a baby shower. I don't know, you know, like what is it that brings people together? And then there's a social discourse that allows us to...
Well, now that all that fringe area or time in our culture here in Adelaide is finished, when do you start working on the next one, and who can be involved?
So happily, it's so easy and everyone is welcome, because I'm sponsored, as it were, by Playford Council. So the door is open and it's free.
And you're open to all suggestions.
I am.
Well, I'm not going to be suggestive now because...
Monday nights, by the way, at Northern Sound System.
We haven't finished yet, and we can plug that in a minute, but we have to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment. Delia Olam has been my guest in this program, and we've been talking about an initiative in the northern suburbs here at Elizabeth called the
Asabiya Theatre of Hope
in
Northern Sound System on Monday nights for people 18 and over, and on Thursday nights for younger creatives 12 to 17.
And you're the leader of that. Is that the right expression, the instigator, leader?
Yeah.
The mama?
Yeah, I guess sometimes I'm being more of a traditional director. I'm certainly being an acting teacher sometimes. And it's a funny sentence, but holding space for the creation of multidisciplinary loveliness.
Well, I think, that's just such a good thing, that people can share their backgrounds, their life experiences, and somewhere to go to actually discuss their problems too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because that'll come out.
Yeah, I think a lot of trust grows very quickly in a space like that, and a lot of joy, and then a lot of capacity and willingness to talk about really hard and beautiful things.
I always ask people this when they're people that create things, but what do you want to do when you grow up?
I say that all the time. Can I be you when I grow up? I say it to my own kids. What do I want to do? Honestly, like this theatre company is the beginning, I think, of the grown-up plan.
Fantastic.
In that, you know, I've had in my heart the notion that when the time was right, when it made sense, that something like this would emerge, and it has really organically and with a lot of confirmations, and so seeing that really grow into itself across the next however many years is going to be very fulfilling and exciting.
Many theatre companies develop like this. It's but it has to have the nucleus of somebody that really has the passion.
Yeah, well, the passion's there, but also I think it's been nice. I I did a lot of making of solo works, like the one about the Persian woman, like the one about motherhood and otherhood, called Joni Mitchell's Daughter, one that I'm making right now about grief and myth making after loss. But when it comes to working with others, I tend to just want to create space for them to feel empowered as makers
you're sort
themselves.
of the mother in this instance,
I guess,
then.
yeah.
And on that note, we have to say goodbye, but it's been just lovely talking with you.
I agree.
So until next time on Our Time, keep yourselves nice till then. Bye.
Bye.